Hey guys, it's Graham. What's crackin'? Got a good one for you today. Last week, something interesting happened in our country. A bunch of people who vote very loudly for certain things to happen proceeded to get a taste of what it looks like when that very thing happens in their own backyard. I am talking, of course, about Martha's Vineyard and the 50 Venezuelans who just got a 2-day vacation there, courtesy of the governor of Florida. Before I delve into the details on that, let's talk about Mark Twain's story called The Man That Corrupted Hadleyburg. It happens to be part of the What So Proudly We Hail collection, and it's probably my favorite piece of writing from the man. Back in my high school days, we got to watch a movie based on this story, which I found on YouTube, and I'll link it below. The plot goes a little something like this. Hadleyburg, Missouri. A town with a proud Christian character which cannot be tempted into any vice or dishonesty. In years past, our narrator passes through the town with the stink of vice on him. A little bit of alcohol, a little bit of gambling, and he's thrown out from amongst these pure people, left to get his life together without any help or guidance. After a long time, he returns, well-dressed and refined, ready to burn this place to the ground, or rather, convince the residents of Hadleyburg to do it for him. The narrator tests their resolve and their commitment to their values of honesty and righteousness by dropping roughly $40,000 worth of gold with the local reverend. He says it's payback for someone who helped him in Hadleyburg decades ago when he was down on his luck. The narrator can't identify this resident, who gave the narrator some very useful advice. If the Reverend can get this Good Samaritan to tell him the advice, the Samaritan will receive the $40,000 in gold. Then, just to make things really spicy, the narrator sends letters to 19 different residents of Hadleyburg saying, "I think it was you. Here's the advice you gave me." The details of the climax are a little bit different between the book and the movie, but they more or less take you to the same place. The residents start to get loud about what they think should be done with the money, pretending to make selfless suggestions, and the ones who received the letters act with false piety as they try to outmaneuver each other in their quest to secure the bag. Soon they're all exposed as greedy liars. Keep in mind, this story takes place in the latter half of the 19th century. $40,000 wasn't just 2/3 of a new Tesla. It was life-altering generational wealth. If the inflation calculator is right, it'd be well over $1 million now, and that's not factoring how much cheaper land was back then either. Not that you'd turn your nose up at $40K in the year 2022, you just need to understand the level of temptation that the narrator was throwing at these people. I'll spare you the details of the ending, because it's worth reading or watching this story. Suffice it to say that Hadleyburg's residents eventually learn that the whole thing was a ruse, and they walk away from it supremely embarrassed at their behavior. Some people were even terrified that others would learn the extent of their dishonest thoughts and intentions. There was no greater humiliation they could suffer than to look in the mirror and realize that they failed to live up to their own professed ideals. Suddenly they didn't want to be so loud about how pure and righteous they were. Got that? Okay, now let's go back and take a look at the Martha's Vineyard thing. For context, you've got to know a little bit about the border situation in the United States, namely that it's terrible and has gotten worse than terrible in the last decade or so. People enter this country with impunity all the time, and a flood of illegal immigrants constantly crosses from Mexico into California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The most recent numbers I heard was something to the effect of 200,000 per month. Florida also gets a lot of newcomers from Cuba and Venezuela who are fleeing communism. Some of these illegal immigrants can rightly be called asylum seekers, though not if they came from a country south of Mexico. For more information on that, take a look at Mexico's own immigration laws. The ones who aren't seeking asylum are often fleeing economic hardship, which sucks, but you can't just assume that everyone crossing the border is here to work hard and make money. Especially when you see the data on human trafficking and the drug trade, and how these things rely heavily on easy border crossing between the US and Mexico. It's a complicated issue, and I'm not arguing that there's a quick and easy solution. You can't just shout, "Do better," and expect it to be resolved. Maybe in the future I'll do a video on immigration and illegal border crossings. This one is about our modern-day Hadleyburg. You see, places like Martha's Vineyard are made up of relatively uniform demographics. People look the same, vote the same, and have the same tax bracket. These are also the places where you see a lot of loud proclamations about being kind and not calling people illegal when they enter a country in a manner contrary to the legal standard. They want the border to be open, damn the consequences, because we've got to be nice. The problem is that Martha's Vineyard is thousands of miles away from the border, and they don't have to deal with the complex issues arising from these frequent, high-volume crossings. The border states do. They want security, and when they ask for it, they're called names and told to be nice by people who pretend to know exactly how to be nice. Then, a mere 50 people arrive illegally in Martha's Vineyard, and suddenly they get the smallest, tiniest taste of what the southern states have to deal with on a regular basis and on a much larger scale. An influx of occupants that nobody knows and nobody wants to house because they know nothing about them. As fast as it did in Hadleyburg, stuff went sideways in Martha's Vineyard. However, unlike Hadleyburg, it doesn't seem like Martha's Vineyard learned its lesson or felt any shame for refusing to live up to its own code. The wealthy residents of the island called in the military to ship the illegal immigrants out on a bus and house them in a military compound where the problem could be out of sight and comfortably out of mind. Vineyard residents could go back to putting their signs up in their yards, declaring empty platitudes that don't solve anything. At the end of the Mark Twain story, Hadleyburg learns that its commitment to honesty and morality means almost nothing if people aren't tried and tempted on a regular basis. It's like reading a math textbook and knowing how it all works in theory, but never practicing math, never encountering it in your daily life. You just keep going on and on about how math works and how everyone should do their math. Until one day, a guy drops a bunch of numbers and equations on your table and you throw them all away without ever trying to solve for X. Phew, that was a close one. If you're mad that a southern governor shipped these people into a northern sanctuary city, ask yourself why he would do that, and try to see it from his perspective instead of just writing him off as mean or bigoted. Why were the residents of Martha's Vineyard unwilling to keep the immigrants there long term? What can be done to solve the illegal immigration that we as a country aren't doing right now? Maybe, just maybe, border security and immigration is a little bit more complicated of an issue than we give it credit for. The same could be said of any uniform moral code, or rather, these moral codes can be simple and straightforward, while applying them and living by them is trickier in a complex world. With any luck, the residents of Martha's Vineyard, will take a closer look at what happened last week and think about what they could do differently in the future. And I suppose that goes for all of us. May we care a little bit less what others think about us and a little bit more about doing the right thing whenever we can, wherever we are. It's complicated, but if we work together, I bet we can figure it out. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and leave a comment below. That helps my stuff get out to more viewers. Take care, drive safe, and I'll see you out there.